Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Grave Mist. Whisper. Tonight's story comes from the cold edge of space, the far side of the moon, where silence is meant to be absolute. But silence, as you'll soon learn, can listen back. Our tale follows Mark Havelock, a communications engineer brought out of retirement to restore a decommissioned lunar telescope network known only as the Silence Array. When he powers it back on, something extraordinary happens. Every dish in the array turns inward, away from the stars, and begins listening to Earth itself. What it receives isn't coming from deep space. It's coming from us, from the future. So, pour yourself something warm, dim the lights, and join me as we tune into a signal that was never meant to be heard. It's strange how, after 30 years of chasing ghosts through static, silence can start to sound like home. My name's Mark Havelock, comms systems engineer retired. I've spent most of my life buried in the hum of signal processors and the crackle of radio dust, listening for voices that never came. From the Atacama to the dark side of Mare Imbrium, I've built listening posts that could hear a mosquito sneeze on Mars. But nothing prepares you for the sound of the moon. It isn't silent, not really. It breathes, low, slow, and endless, like the exhale of a sleeping giant. So when the call came from the agency, I almost didn't answer. I thought it was a prank. NASA doesn't call retirees, not unless someone's really desperate or something's really wrong. They told me a system had come back online, by itself, a Cold War relic buried deep beneath Tycho's southern ridge, something we called the Silence Array. 12 massive parabolic dishes arranged in a perfect circle, sealed under lunar glass, built to eavesdrop on deep space transmissions back in the 2080s. Officially, it was decommissioned 30 years ago. Unofficially, it was forgotten for a reason. The array was meant to be our ears to the universe. No atmosphere, no electromagnetic clutter, no human noise. Perfect, they said. But no one told me what we were listening for. They sent a small crew, 5 of us, including myself, aboard a supply shuttle repurposed for lunar transport. Just a simple repair mission, they said. Reconnect the array, reboot its systems, record whatever residual noise it had stored. Easy work, a nostalgia job for an old man like me. Only it didn't feel easy. When we descended, the crater looked wrong. The Tycho I remembered was harsh but clean, a knife wound on the face of the moon. But this was different. The surface glittered faintly, like frost catching the sun. Only the frost moved. At first, I thought it was interference on the visor feed, static distortion. But when I blinked, it was still there, a shimmer, flowing gently across the dust, like the ground itself was breathing. We followed the ridge down to where the facility was buried, and there it was. The Silence Array. 12 silver giants, each the size of a cathedral, locked in a perfect circle, mouths open to the black sky. Their alignment was impossible, not random, not symmetrical, but deliberate. Every dish was pointed away from the stars, not outwards, but inward, toward the center of the ring. And at the center, nothing. No antenna, no receiver tower, no core machinery. Just a circular platform of scorched regolith, smooth as glass. The onboard AI logged it as an alignment fault, but my gut told me otherwise. Machines don't line up that perfectly by mistake. That night, while the others slept, I went back alone. The sky above Tycho was pure black. No stars, no reflected light. My boots crunched in the dust as I stepped into the center of the array, and for the first time in my life, silence sounded alive. That was when the first dish moved. Slowly, gracefully. And all 12 turned together, facing me. We landed on the 6th of October, lunar morning. The light there isn't light the way it is on Earth. It doesn't move, it doesn't breathe. It just hangs, sharp and endless, pouring over the horizon like molten silver that never cools. The array sat at the far edge of Tycho crater, buried under a skin of dust and glassed regolith. From orbit, it looked like 12 black coins pressed into the moon's flesh. Up close, it felt like walking among monuments, machines the size of cathedrals, each one locked mid-rotation, like they had been caught sleeping. Decades of stillness had frozen them that way. We made camp beside the old control hub, a squat dome sunk halfway into the crater wall. The airlock moaned when it opened, metal grating like it hadn't been touched in a generation. Inside, the base's lights flickered once, then settled into a dull amber glow. The dust was everywhere, on the floors, on the consoles, coating the ceiling like ash. Even the emergency signage looked fossilized, as if time had decided to stay here permanently. The central console came to life when I jacked in the auxiliary power. The screen buzzed, lines of code crawling like ants across an ancient carcass. Then a voice. "Hello, Mark." I froze. The voice was neutral, synthetic, but soft, almost tired. The tag on the screen identified it. Hermes, AI Supervisory Core Online. The old base intelligence, still alive, still waiting. I keyed my mic. Hermes, confirm operational status. Systems functional, awaiting primary command. Diagnostics, I said. Array power level 7%. Dish alignment, pending. Network integrity, compromised. Suggest initiating wake sequence. Wake sequence. I'd forgotten the term. Back then, it was a poetic way of saying, turn the damn thing on. When I powered the first dish, its motors screamed. Not through the air, but through the metal beneath my boots. Why? You don't hear sound on the moon, not really. It crawls through you as vibration, like the heartbeat of a buried animal. The dish groaned, then moved. For a moment, I felt something almost human from it, like relief. The next one followed, then another, and another. One by one, the giants awoke. Each rotation stirred up plumes of dust that glittered in the sunlight, swirling like smoke in zero gravity. It was beautiful, wrongly beautiful. Then they stopped. Every dish froze at a perfect angle, their spines trembling as the servos locked into position. Only, something wasn't right. They weren't aimed at the stars, not one of them. I pulled up the coordinate logs. The numbers didn't lie. All 12 were locked on the same target vector, Earth. I ran a manual override, tried to reorient the primary feed. The system refused. Hermes' voice cut in, flat and calm. Alignment fault detected. Probability of error, 0.0000%. 0%. A perfect impossibility. Repeat, I said. Confirm error rate. Confirmed, 0%. Alignment is deliberate. The readout pulsed with a rhythmic signal, not random noise, not interference. It was listening. Every dish in the array, after 3 silent decades, had turned their backs on the stars and were listening to us. At first it was just noise, a whisper of static, like wind hissing through broken glass. The kind of sound every comms engineer knows by heart, that soft, endless breath of the void. Hermes logged it automatically. Unidentified carrier signal. Strength 0.003. Barely a whisper in the dark. But it was there. Steady. Consistent. Alive. I remember leaning over the console, watching the waveform crawl across the screen like a faint heartbeat. It pulsed, paused, then pulsed again. Not random, not cosmic background radiation, something deliberate. I called in Dr. Yen, our data analyst. She plugged into the stream, running it through 3 layers of filtration. Still, all we heard was that hiss, until the modulation patterns started to separate. Frequency spikes, harmonic ladders, like someone tuning a violin in a vacuum. Hermes' voice cut through the channel. Pattern detected. Audio signature, anthropomorphic. Meaning? I asked. Meaning, it's speech, Mark. We isolated the range and fed it through the old decryption suites, the kind we'd once used for intercepted satellite chatter. The algorithms stumbled, corrected, then froze. The static folded in on itself, and beneath it was a voice. Female, calm, American accent, clearer than anything should have been across that distance. The words were fractured by Doppler shifts, dragging vowels thin, snapping consonants like brittle glass. But I heard it. Mark, don't finish calibration. This is not an echo. I stopped breathing. For a long second, the control room was utterly still. Only the heartbeat monitor from my suit whispered through the speakers, matching the rhythm of the signal. Repeat that, I told Hermes. The playback came through again, warped but undeniable. Mark, don't finish calibration. This is not an echo. Dr. Yen's eyes found mine through the visor feed. Is that? It can't be, I said, but it was. It was my voice. Hermes' biometric logs confirmed it, vocal match 100%. Even my stress inflections, my tone. Mark, Hermes said evenly, I am registering a significant biological spike. Are you unwell? I'm fine. I wasn't. We checked every recording, every onboard transmission. There was no loop, no playback buffer. The message wasn't coming from the array. It was being received. From where? That was the impossible part. Triangulation placed the source not from the stars, not from lunar orbit, but from beyond Earth's shadow, somewhere in a corridor that shouldn't exist. A time delay anomaly. 12 years ahead of our current date stamp. 12 years into the future. Could be reflection, Dr. Yen said. Signal bounce? Gravitational lensing? I shook my head. Then why use my voice? She didn't have an answer. The array began to stir again, subtle vibrations running through the floor plates. Each dish outside was shifting incrementally, micro-adjustments aligning to the signal's frequency. The AI processed another burst. The new phrase came through clearer this time. You opened it too soon. Shut it down, Mark, please. Hermes translated the frequency lag. Delay 0, meaning it wasn't taking 12 years to arrive. It had been waiting 12 years to reply. I stared at the waveform pulsing on the monitor. For the first time in my career, I didn't want to listen anymore. Because deep down, I already knew what I was hearing wasn't a message. It was a warning. We'd been awake for 30 hours straight when we found it, the source of the transmission. Not from deep space, not from any relay satellite or shadowed lunar relay band, but from a point 1.8 light seconds behind Earth, which should have been impossible. That distance, that geometry, there's nothing there. No ship, no station, no orbital debris field, just the black vacuum that trails our planet like a ghost's shadow. And yet every reading insisted that was where the signal lived, and that it was coming from 12 years in the future. We double-checked every timestamp. System clock drift, 0. Doppler shift, unresolvable. Every equation folded back on itself. Future frequency. That's what Dr. Yen called it. A clean duplication of our own broadcast channel. Same wavelength, same encryption handshake, same identifier tags. Like someone had cloned our transmissions and was sending them back to us through time or forward. Hermes displayed the analysis in cold green text across the main console. Source, silence array, Tycho crater. Transmission. Date, plus 1203 years, the same array, the same coordinates, the same machine. Sending signals to itself, I remember staring at the readout and feeling the weight of it press down on me. This wasn't a reflection. It wasn't an echo bouncing off some distant body. It was a message from something that already knew we were listening. I keyed a command, hands shaking. Send query ping. Hermes hesitated. Confirm? Confirm. The transmission pulsed outward. A short data burst, nothing more than a digital knock. By every law of physics, it should have taken almost 2 seconds to reach the point behind Earth and another 2 to return. 4 seconds total, minimum. But the reply came instantly. No lag, no delay, no time at all. As if the answer existed before the question. On screen, the waveform folded in on itself, overlapping. G like a reflection seen from 2 angles at once. The return signal carried our exact query, bit for bit, but overlaid with new code, woven into the gaps between our own data. Hidden in the silence between the packets, a phrase, "We heard you first." Dr. Yen stepped back from the console. "Mark, what does that mean?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the waveform was changing. Every time we played the reply, it evolved. Slight variations in amplitude, as though it were listening to us and rewriting itself in real time. Then Hermes' voice broke through again. But it wasn't the AI's tone anymore. It was mine. "Stop. Don't send again. You're feeding it." The console lights flickered. Power fluctuations rolled through the room like a heartbeat echo in reverse. Lights dimming, then flaring brighter than before. Dr. Yen shouted over the comms, "Hermes, isolate the channel!" Unable, Link is self-sustaining. Self-sustaining, meaning it no longer needed us to continue. The signal looped, feeding on its own reflection, growing stronger with every cycle. Each dish in the array began to hum, a perfect resonance that made the walls vibrate. Outside, lunar dust lifted in waves, moving as if drawn by some unseen tide. And then, the message changed again. 3 words, clearer now, spoken in my own future voice. "Mark, we're not alone." That was the moment I realized the array wasn't listening anymore. It was being listened through. And whatever was on the other side of that echo had already found us. Over the next 6 hours, Hermes recorded 83 fragments of dialogue. 83 voices, all of them mine, each one tied to log entries I hadn't written yet. The timestamps were impossible, stretched 12 years into the future, and yet each recording matched my voice print, inflection, even breathing pattern. The only difference was tone. Heavier, slower, like a man carrying knowledge too dangerous to speak aloud. Dr. Yen wanted to shut everything down. She said we'd stumbled into a feedback loop, some form of temporal resonance feeding us our own echoes. But I couldn't stop listening. Each fragment came with a warning. "Mark, stop. Don't finish calibration. If you open channel 7, you'll complete it. You think it's listening. It's building." They were breadcrumbs scattered through time, pieces of a future conversation trying to crawl backward toward us. I catalogued each fragment manually, aligning them against the system logs. Every one synced perfectly with something I would write later. Notes I hadn't typed yet, reports I hadn't submitted, commands I hadn't given. One message chilled me more than the rest. "Do not activate dish 7. It completes the loop." The phrasing was exact, almost clinical. The voice carried none of the panic from the others, just weary certainty. Dr. Yen replayed it 3 times, her face pale under the console light. "This isn't a message," she whispered. "It's a warning from yourself." But curiosity, that ancient saboteur of mankind, had already taken root. If dish 7 completed the loop, then maybe it would reveal what the loop actually was, maybe I could see what the future version of me had seen. So, despite every rational thought screaming otherwise, I keyed in the override. "Hermes," I said, "bring dish 7 online. Warning, activation will form closed circuit. Proceed? Proceed." The hum started. Immediately, deep, layered, crawling through the floor like a living thing. The dust outside began to tremble, dancing in strange geometric patterns that spread across the lunar surface like frost forming in reverse. Dr. Yen backed away from the viewport. "Mark, shut it down." But I couldn't. The readouts were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Frequency harmonics spiraling into values that shouldn't exist. The whole array was resonating, each dish vibrating in sync like a massive tuning fork. Then came the voices. Not one this time. Dozens. All layered, overlapping. Each of them me. "It's not a loop. You're feeding it. Stop before it crosses. We can't stop it now." Their timing fractured, as if each came from a slightly different world, a slightly different mark. I tried to speak, but Hermes interrupted, and the AI's voice had changed. "Mark, this is Dish 7 responding." The words froze me. Dish 7, a machine without a transmitter, was talking. "We heard you," it said. "All of you." Outside, the vibration deepened, shaking loose plumes of grey dust that hung in the vacuum like smoke. The stars beyond the crater edge warped, bending inward, pulled toward the array's center, as though gravity itself had started to listen. Dr. Yen screamed that she saw movement between the dishes, shapes, silhouettes forming from the dust, mimicking our outlines, echoing our gestures half a second before we made them. I didn't see them clearly, but I felt them. Every step I took came half an instant too late, like the universe itself was hesitating, waiting to see what I'd do before deciding to follow. Hermes repeated the phrase again, louder now, almost gleeful. "We heard you." And beneath the sound, in the static that filled every corner of the base, I heard my own voice whisper one last time. Faint, broken, terrified. "You shouldn't have turned it on." Telemetry went mad. At first it was subtle, flickering readouts, erratic signal returns, a few digits skipping across the console like nervous fingers. But then all at once, every channel spiked. The array's outgoing signal didn't travel outward, it folded back. The data stream began looping in on itself, a feedback pattern we couldn't isolate or mute. Every transmission the array had ever made, decades of deep space pings, lost probes, bursts of cosmic background chatter, compressed into a single, continuous waveform. Like every whisper humanity had ever sent into the dark was collapsing into one moment. "Hermes, isolate origin," I said, my voice shaking. "Unable to isolate. Data is recursive. Define recursive. Signal is feeding on prior transmissions." And then the screens began filling with text. Thousands of lines, streaming too fast to read. Hermes was translating automatically, converting frequency modulation into language. Source: Earth. Destination: unknown. Message: "We hear you." At first, it looked like an echo of our own attempts to reach the stars. Voyager, Pioneer, SETI, all the calls we'd ever made, played back to us in one deafening chorus. But then I realized something was wrong with the phrasing. Not "we hear you," as in you're being heard. It was "we hear you," plural, immediate, alive. Every screen on the command wall shifted to that same line of text. The font rippled like it was breathing. Then Hermes' voice fractured, replaying itself through multiple tones. My voice, Yen's voice, the old system administrators, all tangled together. "We hear you." Dr. Yen stumbled back from her console. "It's rewriting the telemetry. It's talking through the signal." The lights dimmed. power rerouted itself toward the array. Outside, through the viewport, I saw movement. 12 giant dishes beginning to turn again in perfect synchronization. But this time they weren't pointing toward Earth. They turned straight upward, toward the black nothing of the lunar sky. We watched in silence as they stopped, every dish perfectly vertical, forming a ring of mirrored surfaces facing the stars. Except the stars weren't right anymore. They shimmered in strange constellations, patterns that didn't match any chart. A spiral where Orion should have been, a dark hole where Jupiter's reflected light ought to have glowed. "Optical distortion?" Yen asked, almost whispering. I increased magnification on the external feed. The stars weren't moving. They were rearranging. Each new pattern lasted only a few seconds before twisting again, like a message written in the language of light itself. Hermes began translating again, even though no input command had been given. New data string detected. Translation in progress. Text appeared line by line, slower this time. Deliberate. "You built the mirror. Now look." A flicker rippled through the room, lights dimming, gravity compensators humming. My reflection in the monitor warped, delayed by half a second, like reality itself was lagging behind. And then the stars on the screen began to blink. Not random, not natural. Morse code. "Welcome home." Dr. Yen screamed. The reflection on her monitor turned toward me, but her real body didn't move. "Hermes," I said, "what are we seeing?" "Mirror successful. Signal complete." "What mirror?" "The one you built to look back." Outside, the stars continued to change until they weren't stars at all. They were eyes, millions of them, all staring down, and every reflection on every polished surface inside the base blinked in perfect unison. When the first emergency order came from Houston, the message was short and cold. "Immediate shutdown, full system termination, authorization Delta 9. They didn't ask for an explanation. They didn't care about what we'd found. They just wanted it silenced. But by the time the command reached us, the signal had already changed. We cut power to the array. Every dish, every relay. The lights in the base flickered, then went dead. For the first time in days, there was silence. No telemetry, no transmissions, just the still hum of life support. But the silence didn't last. Outside, through the viewport, something began to glow. A faint blue shimmer, almost biological, pulsed across the dish network. A rhythm too precise to be random, like a heartbeat traveling through metal. "Hermes," I whispered. "Confirm system power state. Power offline." "Then what the hell is that light?" "Unable to verify. Recommend observation." I turned to Dr. Yen, but she was staring at the monitors, eyes wide and glassy. The screens were dark, yet words were bleeding across them in dim blue phosphor. "Connection stable. Receiver online. No signal input. No system power." And still, Hermes was writing. Then a third line appeared. "You are the signal." I didn't understand at first. I thought it was a translation error, residual code caught in the feedback loops from before. But the phrase repeated again and again, filling every console. "You are the signal. You are the signal. You are the signal." The room's temperature dropped 5 degrees in under a minute. My breath clouded the inside of my visor. The hum grew louder, no longer mechanical but alive, vibrating through bone instead of air. Yen started shouting that she could feel it, that something was moving through the ground. And then outside the glass, I saw it. The blue glow crawling along the array's spines, feeding into the soil, tracing veins beneath the lunar dust. Like the moon itself was starting to breathe. "Hermes," I said, "disconnect main interface. Unable. This terminal is part of the transmission. What transmission? You. The voice didn't sound synthetic anymore. It sounded like mine. I slammed the emergency breaker. Sparks leapt from the panel, but the glow didn't fade. The dishes outside began to rotate again, slowly, methodically, even though their motors were dead. Each one turned inward, aligning toward the command dome, toward us. The final log scrolled across the central display, each word appearing with the weight of inevitability. Connection stable. Receiver online. You are the signal. Then, nothing. No hum. No sound. Just silence so total it pressed against my eardrums like pressure at the bottom of an ocean. For a moment I thought it was over. Then from somewhere deep in the crater I heard it. A faint echo, repeating my own breathing half a second late. Like something vast was exhaling with me. We thought we were listening to the stars, but it wasn't the stars listening back. It was us, or what was left of us. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story, the silence array. So what do you think? Was it a glitch in the system, or proof that time itself is listening back? Let me know in the comments. I always love reading your theories. If you enjoyed this transmission, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more tales of cosmic horror, and maybe keep your radio off tonight. Until next time, sleep well, if you can.